Good evening, and welcome to the Sleepy Badger. My name is Oliver, and tonight I'll be your guide as we wander into a world of gentle stories, cozy places, and peaceful dreams. So before we begin, take a moment to get comfortable. Settle beneath your blankets. Rest your head upon your pillow and allow the worries of the day to drift away. There is nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to do, and nothing expected of you. For the next little while, simply listen. Together, we'll visit quiet villages beneath the stars, moonlit forests filled with winding streams that whisper through the night, and warm cottages where lanterns glow softly in the darkness. As our story unfolds, feel free to close your eyes whenever you wish, and if sleep finds you before we reach the end, that's perfectly all right. That's exactly what these stories are for. So take a slow, gentle breath, relax, and let's begin tonight's journey. Welcome to the Sleepy Badger. The day had been warm in Willow Creek, not hot, not uncomfortable, just warm enough for the stones in the little village paths to hold the heat of the sun, long after the shadows had begun to stretch. It was the sort of summer evening where everything seemed to slow down on its own. The clouds moved lazily across the sky. The trees swayed only when the breeze asked them to, and the stream that wound its way through Willow Creek murmured gently over smooth stones, as though it were telling itself a bedtime story. At the edge of the village, beside that very stream, stood Oliver's cottage. It was a small, cozy cottage with a rounded wooden door, crooked stone walls, and a roof tucked beneath a soft green blanket of moss. Honeysuckle climbed around the windows, lavender grew beside the front step, and just outside the door hung Oliver's little lantern, waiting patiently for nightfall. Oliver the badger sat on the wooden step with both paws wrapped around a mug of honey tea. The mug was warm, the air was warm, even the breeze seemed warm as it drifted across the garden and rustled the leaves of the old willow tree nearby. Oliver took a slow sip and let out a quiet, contented sigh. There was no rush. There was never much rush in Willow Creek. That was one of the reasons Oliver loved it so. Across the garden, Maple the cat was asleep on her favorite cushion. The cushion had once belonged inside the cottage, beside the fireplace, but Maple had dragged it outside earlier that afternoon with great determination and absolutely no explanation. Oliver had watched her do it, slowly, stubbornly, with several dramatic pauses, and now, after all that effort, she was curled on top of it in a neat orange circle, sleeping as though moving a cushion across a garden path had been the hardest work any creature had ever done. Oliver looked at her and smiled.
"You've had a very busy day,"
he said softly. Maple did not reply. She simply twitched one ear. Oliver accepted this as agreement. The evening light rested gently over the valley. It turned the windows of the cottages golden. It warmed the tops of the hills. It painted the clouds in soft shades of peach, cream, and lavender. All around Willow Creek, the day was quietly putting itself away. In the village square, the baker was sweeping the last dusting of flour from the step outside his shop. The scent of fresh bread still lingered in the air, warm rolls, seeded loaves, tiny sweet buns glazed with honey and sprinkled with sugar. The sort of smell that made even full bellies wonder if perhaps there was room for just one more bite. A little farther down the lane, the gardener was gathering her tools from beside the flower beds. She rinsed her watering can, brushed soil from her apron, and gave the roses one last fond look before heading home. The roses nodded gently in the breeze, as if wishing her good night. Beyond the square, the blacksmith closed the doors to his workshop. The orange glow of the forge had faded to a sleepy red. His hammer had been set down. His workbench was tidy, and the last warm curl of smoke drifted up from the chimney into the evening sky. One by one, the village sound softened. Doors closed, curtains were drawn, kettles were placed on stoves, chairs creaked beside fireplaces, and lanterns began to glow in windows, one after another, like small stars appearing across the village. Oliver watched it all from his cottage step. He liked this part of the day, the gentle in-between, not quite day, not quite night. A time when the world seemed to pause and take a breath. The stream moved steadily beside him, slipping beneath the little stone bridge and winding away toward the meadow. Its surface caught the last of the sunlight and scattered it in tiny golden pieces. Now and then, a leaf floated past, slowly turning, drifting, carried along without any effort at all. Oliver watched one leaf glide beneath the bridge and disappear around the bend.
There's a sensible way to travel,
he murmured. Maple opened one eye, then closed it again. Apparently, she had no strong opinion on leaves. Oliver chuckled quietly and took another sip of tea. The sweetness of honey warmed his chest. The mug warmed his paws, and the peaceful evening settled around him like a soft blanket. Above the village, the sky deepened. The peach and gold faded slowly into lilac. The lilac softened into blue, and high above the hills, the very first star appeared. Oliver noticed it at once. He always did. There was something comforting about the first star. It arrived before all the others, quietly taking its place in the sky, as though making sure the night was ready. Oliver gave it a small nod.
Good evening,
he whispered. The star, being a star, said nothing at all, but it twinkled, and that was enough. The breeze moved through the willow tree. The long branches swayed over the stream, trailing their leaves almost to the water. Somewhere nearby, a blackbird sang its final song of the day. Not loudly, not for attention, just a soft, liquid melody that rose and fell in the cooling air. Oliver listened until the song faded. Then there was only the stream, the breeze, the soft creak of his cottage sign, and Maple's gentle breathing from the cushion. It was a very ordinary evening, and yet there was something different about it. Oliver could feel it, a tiny change in the air, a quiet kind of excitement. Not the loud sort, not the sort that bangs on doors or calls everyone into the street. This was gentler than that. It was the feeling of something lovely approaching on soft feet. Oliver sat very still. He looked toward the stream. The reeds along the bank swayed lightly. The water moved over the stones, the shadows gathered beneath the bridge, and then, there it was, a tiny flash of gold. Oliver blinked. The light vanished. For a moment, there was only the blue evening air. Then it appeared again. Blink. A small golden glow hovered just above the reeds. Blink. Darkness. Blink. Light. Oliver leaned forward, his tea forgotten between his paws. The tiny light drifted slowly above the water, rising and falling as if it were being carried by a breath. A firefly. The very first firefly of the summer. Oliver smiled. Not a big smile. Not a surprise smile. But the kind of smile that arrives quietly when something dear and familiar returns. The firefly floated across the stream. Its little light flickered again and again, a golden spark in the deepening blue. Maple lifted her head. This alone was remarkable. Maple did not often lift her head unless food, warmth, or a deeply inconvenient door was involved. She stared at the firefly. The firefly blinked. Maple blinked back. Oliver laughed softly.
I think,
He said,
we may have company tonight.
The firefly drifted toward the lavender by the doorstep. For a moment, it hovered above the purple flowers, glowing gently. Then it rose into the air and floated away toward the stream again. Oliver watched it go. The first firefly was never alone for long. He knew that. Every summer, when the air grew warm and the nights became soft, the fireflies returned to Willow Creek. They came quietly, one at first, then a few, and then dozens, then so many that the whole valley seemed to sparkle beneath the stars. Oliver remembered seeing them as a young badger. He remembered standing in the meadow wide-eyed, while golden lights drifted around him like tiny lanterns. He remembered thinking the stars had come down to visit, and even now, after all these years, it still felt a little bit true. Another light appeared by the bridge, then another near the willow tree, then two more above the stream. Blink, blink, blink. Tiny golden lights floating in the evening air. Oliver set his mug carefully beside him. Maple sat up fully now, her tail curled neatly around her paws. Together they watched as the fireflies slowly gathered. The daylight faded. The first stars brightened. The village windows glowed, and all along the creek little lights began to dance. Oliver breathed in the warm summer air. He could smell lavender, honeysuckle, fresh bread from the village, and the clean, cool scent of water moving over stone. He looked at Maple. Maple looked at the fireflies. Then, with great dignity, she stood, stretched her front paws, arched her back, and stepped down from her cushion. Oliver knew that look. It was the look Maple wore when she had decided something was worth investigating.
Well then,
Oliver said, rising slowly from the step.
shall we take a little walk?
Maple gave a tiny chirp, which in Maple's language meant yes. Oliver picked up his lantern from beside the door, though he did not light it yet. There was still a little blue light left in the sky. And besides, the fireflies were doing rather a lovely job all on their own. He took one last look at his cottage, at the mossy roof, the lavender by the step, the warm glow waiting behind the windows. Then he turned toward the path beside the creek. Maple padded softly at his side. The first fireflies of summer drifted ahead of them, and together, beneath the deepening evening sky, Oliver and Maple followed the gentle stream into the golden twilight. The path beside the creek was quiet. Only the gentle sound of flowing water accompanied Oliver and Maple as they made their way through the evening. The sky above Willow Creek had deepened into shades of velvet blue. The last traces of sunset had slipped beyond the hills, and now the first stars were beginning to shine, one by one, patiently, as though each star was taking his turn to greet the night. Oliver walked slowly. There was no reason to hurry. The fireflies drifted ahead of him, floating above the stream like tiny lanterns. Every few moments another appeared. A flash of gold near the reeds, a sparkle beside the wildflowers, a tiny light dancing above the water. The farther they walked, the more they saw. Blink, blink, blink. Small golden lights scattered through the darkness, each one moving gently in its own direction. Some hovered low over the grass, others drifted high among the willow branches. A few floated across the creek and reflected in the water below, creating the illusion of two fireflies where only one existed. Oliver paused beside the little stone bridge. It was one of his favorite places in the village. The bridge wasn't grand. It wasn't famous. It was simply old, older than anyone could remember. Smooth stones covered its surface. Tiny patches of moss grew between the cracks, and beneath it, the stream flowed steadily day and night. Oliver rested his paws on the stone wall and looked down. The water reflected the stars, the moon, and now the fireflies. Tiny golden lights shimmered across the surface. The creek looked as though it had collected pieces of the night sky and decided to keep them. A gentle breeze moved through the valley. The willow branches swayed. The long leaves brushed softly against one another. Somewhere nearby, a cricket began singing. Then another. Soon a whole chorus filled the evening air. Not loud, not distracting, just a steady, peaceful soundtrack to the night. Maple sat beside Oliver, her tail wrapped neatly around her paws. For once, she seemed completely awake. Her eyes followed the movement of the fireflies, left, right, up, down. One firefly drifted particularly close. It hovered just above her nose. Maple crossed her eyes, trying to look at it. The firefly blinked. Maple blinked. The firefly floated away. Maple watched it go. Oliver chuckled quietly.
Outsmarted again.
Maple ignored him. Ahead, warm light glowed from the village windows. As darkness settled fully over Willow Creek, families gathered inside their cottages. Some were reading books beside crackling fires. Some were finishing evening meals. Others were already tucked beneath blankets. Yet through many of the windows, curious faces appeared. Because everyone had noticed the fireflies. Children pressed noses against glass. Parents smiled from behind them. Grandparents sat comfortably in rocking chairs, remembering summers long ago. The return of the fireflies was something everyone loved. It was one of those small traditions that belonged to Willow Creek, not written down, not announced, simply expected. Each summer, the fireflies arrived, and each summer, the village welcomed them home. Oliver continued along the creek. The path wound between flower gardens and little stone cottages. The scent of roses drifted through the air. Lavender swayed gently in the breeze. Jasmine climbed over fences and garden gates. Even in the darkness, the flowers seemed alive with color. Fireflies floated among the petals, golden lights weaving through pink roses, drifting above purple lavender, gliding between white daisies. The gardens had become tiny glowing worlds. At one cottage, an elderly hedgehog sat in a rocking chair on her porch. She wore a knitted shawl and held a mug of peppermint tea. A single firefly landed briefly on the railing beside her. She smiled warmly.
Good evening, little one.
The firefly blinked, then drifted away into the darkness. At another cottage, 2 rabbits sat on their doorstep. They watched dozens of fireflies dancing above their vegetable patch. Carrots grew in neat rows. Pumpkins rested beneath broad leaves. Tomatoes hung heavily from their vines. And floating above it all were hundreds of tiny lights. The rabbits sat quietly. There was nothing to say. The fireflies spoke for themselves. Oliver and Maple eventually reached the center of the village. The square looked different tonight. Usually it was filled with lantern light. Tonight, the fireflies had become lanterns of their own. Golden lights drifted above the fountain, above the benches, above the cobbled paths. The entire square seemed to glow. Oliver stood still for a moment. The sight never failed to amaze him. No matter how many summers passed, no matter how many times he witnessed it, there was always something magical about seeing the fireflies return. Perhaps it was because they asked for nothing. They simply arrived, danced, glowed, and reminded everyone to slow down for a while. A firefly floated past Oliver's shoulder, then another, then 3 more. The little lights seemed to move with the breeze, never fighting it, never rushing, simply allowing themselves to drift wherever the evening carried them. Oliver thought there was probably a lesson in that, though he wasn't quite sure what it was. Perhaps some things were better felt than explained. The moon climbed higher. The village grew quieter. Yet the number of fireflies continued to grow. Hundreds now floated throughout Willow Creek. Perhaps thousands. The stream sparkled with reflections. The gardens shimmered. The meadows beyond the village glowed faintly in the distance. And somewhere beyond those meadows, Oliver could see even more lights dancing in the darkness. The largest gathering was still waiting. The great summer dance of the fireflies. It happened every year in the old meadow beyond the creek. And tonight would be no different. Oliver smiled. He knew exactly where he and Maple would be heading next. The meadow was waiting, and so were the fireflies. Oliver and Maple left the village square behind them and continued along the winding path beside the creek. The cottages slowly became fewer. The lanterns grew farther apart. And before long, the sounds of Willow Creek softened into the distance. Ahead of them, the countryside stretched peacefully beneath the moonlight. The stream flowed beside the path, silver now beneath the stars. The water moved gently around smooth stones and fallen branches, creating a soft, endless murmur that seemed to belong to the night itself. Oliver always liked listening to the creek. It never hurried, never worried, never complained. It simply flowed, steadily, patiently, exactly where it needed to go. A firefly drifted low across the water. Its reflection shimmered below it. For a moment, it looked as though two tiny lanterns were traveling together through the darkness. Maple padded quietly beside Oliver. Her paws made almost no sound on the path. Now and then she paused to watch a firefly, or sniff a flower, or stare suspiciously at absolutely nothing at all. Oliver had long ago stopped trying to understand cats. Some mysteries simply remained mysteries. The path curved around a patch of tall grass. As they rounded the bend, Oliver noticed movement ahead. A family of rabbits. 3 tiny young rabbits and their mother. The little ones had spent the evening playing near their burrow, but now they were growing sleepy. One by one, they hopped down the grassy slope toward home. The smallest rabbit paused halfway. A firefly floated past its nose. The young rabbit watched it with wide eyes. The firefly blinked. The rabbit blinked. Then, apparently satisfied, the little rabbit disappeared into the burrow after its family. Oliver smiled. The fireflies seemed to make everyone a little softer, a little quieter, a little more willing to simply sit and enjoy the evening. Farther along the creek, they reached a small pond where the water widened and slowed. Moonlight shimmered across its surface. Tall reeds swayed gently around the edges, and floating among them were dozens of fireflies. The golden lights reflected beautifully in the still water. The pond looked as though it had been sprinkled with tiny stars. Near the far bank, a family of ducks was settling down for the night. Several ducklings floated close together, while their mother rested nearby. One by one, the ducklings tucked their heads beneath their wings. Soon only gentle ripples remained. The pond grew still. The ducks drifted peacefully beneath the moon. Oliver stood quietly for a moment. Watching sleeping creatures always made him feel calm. There was something comforting about knowing the world could rest. The ducks rested. The rabbits rested. Soon the sheep would be resting beneath the oak tree. Even the village itself seemed to breathe more slowly at night. Maple sat beside the pond and yawned. A very large yawn. The sort of yawn that made it seem impossible she could remain awake much longer. Oliver laughed softly.
Tired already?
Maple looked mildly offended by the suggestion, then yawned again. The answer was obvious. They continued onward. The path now entered a small woodland that bordered the meadow. Tall trees stretched overhead. Their leaves whispered together in the breeze. Moonlight filtered through the branches in soft silver patches. The air felt cooler here. Fresh, peaceful. Fireflies drifted among the trunks. Some floated high above the path. Others moved slowly through the ferns. Everywhere Oliver looked, tiny lights blinked gently in the darkness. The woodland felt enchanted, as though the stars themselves had come down to explore among the trees. Somewhere deeper in the woods, an owl called, a low, gentle sound. Not frightening, not lonely, simply part of the night. A moment later, the owl appeared. It perched silently on a branch above the path. Its feathers glowed pale silver in the moonlight. The owl watched Oliver and Maple pass below. Oliver nodded politely. The owl blinked once, then returned its attention to the woodland. The exchange lasted only a moment, but somehow it felt important, like two old neighbors wishing each other a peaceful evening. The path wound onward. The creek continued beside them, and soon another sight appeared among the trees, a fox den. The entrance sat beneath the roots of a great old oak. Soft grass grew around the opening. Wild flowers swayed nearby. And inside the den, illuminated faintly by moonlight, a family of foxes slept. A mother fox lay curled around her young kits. Tiny noses, tiny paws, tiny tails, all tucked safely together. The kits barely moved. Only the occasional twitch of an ear or paw revealed that they were dreaming. Oliver paused. So did Maple. The fireflies drifted silently above the den, golden lights moving through the darkness like floating embers. The fox family remained peacefully asleep, warm, safe, comfortable. For a long moment, nobody moved. Not Oliver, not Maple, not even the breeze. The entire woodland seemed wrapped in stillness. Then one of the fox kits gave a tiny, sleepy stretch. The mother fox adjusted slightly. The kits snuggled closer together, and calm returned once more. Oliver smiled. Some sights were simply too lovely to rush past. Eventually, they continued along the path. The trees began to thin. The woodland opened, and ahead, beyond the final line of trees, Oliver could see a soft silver glow spreading across the grass. The meadow. They had almost arrived, and judging by the hundreds of tiny golden lights already dancing above it, the fireflies had arrived too. Oliver could hardly wait to see them. But there was no hurry. There never was. The fireflies would be dancing for hours yet, and the night was still young. This is the end of part 1. Good night for now. Sweet dreams.